the numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell. With me in Deadbug Studios is
Coach Nez.
Visit us at zpnetwork.com, zoicsonline.com. We're on Facebook at the Nothing Shocking Podcast community fan page and the Quad Cities Rock and Roll Junkies interest group. Our Twitter handle is No Shock Pod. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all your podcatchers. Rate and review the show. We'll read your reviews on the air. We are on Rock Rage Radio Sundays at 2 p.m. Central Time. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I forget to say that on the podcast, so I apologize.
When they hear it, they already know.
Yeah. I want to thank the band Hong Kong Sleepover for letting us use their music and our other sponsors.
Yes, Ragged Records, Rock Island, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa. But right now you cannot shop at Davenport, Iowa location because they are regutting it because they got hit with the flood of the Great Mississippi River. Also, we have Legends Picks Guitar Picks out of Milan, Illinois, and RockstarPicks.rocks out of Queens, New York.
Our guest this week is Phil Soussan.
Yep, Soussan, yeah, whatever.
Another great interview.
He was excellent. Yeah, he worked with so many different people, you know.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk to people who have that wide variety of, I don't know, experiences.
Yeah. Big egos he's worked with, big-time musicians, which makes him big-time, right?
Oh, yeah. It was, yeah, you're going to enjoy the interview. I will mention the local shows coming up. August 10th, Cedar Rapids, Rob Zombie, Marilyn Manson. October 8th, I skipped over one, Ghost. Yep. September 22nd, Godsmack Hailstorm. November 14th, Slayer, Ministry, Primus, and Phil Anselmo. September 17th, I believe, Flying Colors is coming to St. Charles. If you've never, no one's seen them except for me.
Yeah.
But if you've never heard of them, go see this tour. They're not doing many dates. They've only played in the U.S. like 5 times. This will be the first time they've done more than that. Mike Portnoy, Steve Morse,
Neil Morse,
Casey McPherson.
No, Casey Mc. I don't know.
I don't have it in front of me.
No, I don't know.
Mick something and.
David LaRue.
Yeah. Just what I think could be like U2, Coldplay big. You know, you put them on a tour with either of those bands, they're going to blow those fans away and be like, this is what real musicians sound like. No offense to U2 or Coldplay. But it is such an eclectic sound. It's not just pure progressive music. It is just great music overall. Love this band, and I'm glad they're coming back out.
Very progressive. Very progressive.
No, not at all.
You don't think they're progressive in what they do? I think so.
They wouldn't be in the genre. The only reason the kids are progressive is the fact that they've been a progressive band.
Because I think they're so different than what anybody else does. That's what I think they're progressive in their approach. I'm not saying it's got to be prog rock. I think it's progressive because nobody does what they do.
That works. They're not in the progressive genre.
They're not a prog band. They're not Dream Theater.
No.
But they're very progressive in what they do because nobody sounds like it. Okay. Nobody sounds like it.
I understand what you're saying. You're right there. It's just sometimes people use that word progressive as a genre. And you're right. No one sounds like them. It's such an eclectic sound. You can't really pigeonhole the.
They sound like nobody.
No,
nobody, and nobody's ever sounded like them.
They sound like nobody, and they sound like everybody at the same time. They're one of a kind. I mean, it is a phenomenal band that you should go see if you get the chance. If nothing else, pick up their albums. Am I forgetting anything?
Hong Kong Sleepover, July 26th, Ribco. But this is already past.
Yeah, this will be way past then. Nice. It was a good show, though.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you, it's already been a great show.
We recorded it before the show, but this is coming out well after the show. But they'll be back around, too. If you get a chance to see Hong Kong Sleepover in their area, they are a great band for different reasons. They kind of got that Black Label meets Motorhead sound, just a phenomenal rock band. But I don't know. Should we get to Phil?
Let's do it.
All right, enjoy Phil Soussan.
Good night. Hey, Phil, are you there?
Hello.
Hey, Phil, are you there?
Hey.
Hey.
I am here, Bob.
This is Eric Nesbitt, the one who's been emailing you.
Hey, Eric. How are you?
Doing well. I want to introduce you to my co-host, Bob Zerl.
Hello. Thank you for doing this.
Hi. Hey, Bob. How are you? You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Well, fantastic. Well, all right. So I'm a big fan of Jonesy's Jukebox. I listen to it, download it all the time when I'm mowing my grass, and I go back in the archives. And so when I was out of the States, I was on vacationing. Yourself and Vivian Campbell were on Jonesy's Jukebox. And so a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to it. And I thought, you know what? I got to send an invitation to Phil because I didn't think you got enough airtime yourself on that thing. So we wanted to bring you on.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm really glad that you did. And I did that actually twice in quick succession. I did one of them with it was Vinny and myself, and then one was Vivian and myself. So yeah, we did it a couple of times, and I love Steve Jones. I've known him for a long time, and he's just very dry. So.
I guess the thing, before we kind of get on task here, is that the thing that I enjoy most about listening to his show is, if I'm not right, it's on KLOS and it's on FM radio, and then they change it into a podcast and they take all the music segments out and then kind of just turn it into nothing but a talk show. Is that correct? Is that how he kind of does things there?
I am not sure. The last time I sort of looked through it, I could see that they edited out the music, and I think that the reason they do that is probably because of licensing and stuff.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, whenever you put a piece of music with any kind of video footage, it gets quite complicated. I'm sure you know this, but maybe your listeners don't. But there are all kinds of synchronization fees and permissions and all sorts of stuff that hoops you have to jump through. And so I'm sure that's probably part of it.
Sure, absolutely. Well, let's get on task here with why we have you on the podcast. So, as of right now, what are you working on? I know the Last in Line has kind of taken off on its own identity now since you guys have been out there. What have you and the band have been up to most recently?
Well, I just got home. Actually, I've been home for a few days to take care of all the stuff I haven't been able to take care of since I've been gone, and helping some friends out. I just got back from Derek Sherinian's. I was helping him with the studio and stuff. So, I do stuff to help, working with other musicians and helping do whatever, needs to be done. We have a good, nice, tightly knit community of musicians. And so we're always doing things together. As far as Last in Line goes, we were in Britain, and we played the Download Festival, which was amazing. Used to be called, Donington Monsters of Rock, but they've changed the name and they've slightly changed the location a little bit, and now it's called Download. Mm-hmm. And it's a big festival. It's over 100,000 people, so it's probably the biggest festival in Britain, and it was just awesome. It was awesome for me to do it. It was awesome for us to be invited to play it collectively as a band. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny actually. Cause last time I played it was 1986, and I headlined it. I was playing with Ozzy at the time, and there was a young band opening for us. It was Def Leppard. They weren't that young, actually. Joe's older than me, but they opened for us, and here we are, X number of years later, and they're headlining, and we're opening for them. So I guess it all, the roundabout of life works in very strange ways, and we were really thrilled to be asked on there, and it was just such a pleasure to play with those guys. And of course, Vivian ended up doing double duty because he plays in both bands.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that kind of is like a segue to the next question. We talked about festivals and massive festivals such as Download or Downington. How do you kind of compare and contrast the state of rock and roll festivals from back in the day when you were headlining it, as opposed to now when you were opening up for it?
Festivals have always been a little strange for me because it's the feeling that you get is everyone's just milling around and then everybody disappears from the social area to go play a set, and then they come back. It's like imagine a big pen in a farm, and you've got a whole bunch of musicians all running around, which is probably not that different from a farm because, we're all pretty dirty. But anyway, we're all, holed up in this pen and we're hanging out. We haven't seen each other for ages and everyone's talking to everybody, having a good time. And then a group will break off and go play a set and then come back, and then the next group will break off. So it's very much a social event as much as a performing event. And I don't know that it makes that much difference whether you're headlining it or whether you're not. They still get to hang out. Most people look forward to seeing people and spending time and catching up with old friends. And so it's terrific. From the fans' perspective, I mean, it's just awesome. You get up there and I don't care how long you've been doing it, it takes your breath away. I mean, it really does. You stand up there for a moment, and then there's invariably a moment when you sort of have like a little wake-up moment. You're being professional, you've been doing this your whole life, and then there's always that little wake-up moment where it's like, holy cow, how did I get here? Or here I am sitting in front of all these people. It's a breathtaking moment. So, and obviously we have a lot of fun trying to engage the audience. It's difficult to do in a big festival. If you're playing a smaller show, you're right there. You can see the look in people's eyes. When you're playing a big festival, they're much further away from you, and you're much further away from them. And there's always that sense that there's a bit of some kind of connective barrier, or it's a barrier of space between the two of you. So sometimes you have to, try a little harder and really try to sort of pick up and perceive the vibe within the audience. But I love festivals. The only thing that sucks about festivals is, especially over there, is they're open air, and invariably, you get out and do these things, and it starts raining or it's mud or something, which can't be a lot of fun. So. Sometimes you feel bad.
No,
not too bad, but just slightly bad, Andy's great. Andy, it starts raining. He's like, anytime it starts raining, he looks around at me and he says, I'm going out there. I'm going out with these guys. And he'll run to the end of the ramp, and he'll sit there and get drenched and just be one with them. And he's not attached to any serious electrical equipment, so it's okay for him, and people get off on that. I mean, they get excited. They take that as a, great, this guy's not being a pansy, he's not just hanging out there and trying to stay dry,
That's very cool. I've always, up until recently, tried to avoid the festivals just because I like the smaller shows. I like to see I like the longer sets but the last couple of years I've been going to the Chicago Open Air Festival, and it's just like all these bands that I like playing shorter sets, but twice as many people, if not more. There is a different kind of energy that you get with a stadium full of people versus an arena or even a club or whatever, that I thought was really cool. Do you think that, the state of rock and roll had been struggling? I feel like it's kind of coming back right now, and these festivals popping up throughout the U.S., is that helping the state of rock and roll, or is that saturating it?
No, I don't think it's saturating it. I mean, back in the 80s and stuff, when every time you turned on TV or you looked at an awards show, it was just full of rock and metal and classic rock acts, and now they're not quite as commonplace. And there are festivals all over the country. There are country festivals, and there are electric daisy festivals, and there are festivals for all kinds of music. And I don't think that we're anywhere close to being saturated for rock music here. In actual fact, I think rock music has been probably more active in Europe than it has been here for some time.
Right.
Sort of going out on a limb, it's just my feeling about that. I might be wrong about it, but I think we can certainly have more rock festivals and get back into that whole idea. I mean, rock music is its own thing. You got big stars, you got rap stars, you got hip hop stars, you got country stars. Nobody ever says, oh, that person's a real country star. That person, but they'll say that person's a rock star.
Right.
And so rock has this unique thing, and it's larger than life. That's what it means, and it fits perfectly into the kind of festival environment. There are some musics which I don't know that you would have maybe a folk ballad festival. You could have that, but I don't think it would quite have the same impact as a rock festival. And so that's what I feel about it. I do agree with you with one thing though, that it is a different set, and you have to bear that in mind, because when they start putting on 5 and 6 bands, obviously those bands are not doing their full set. So, we try to scale a set down, and we try to say, well, okay, let's do something which has a great impact, that has great continuity from start to finish, and that doesn't bore the audience. So they don't sit there twiddling their thumbs and say, okay, well, who's on next? You just want to come in there with a bang and sort of leave them wanting more. And so we do have a different experience at a rock at a festival than from a small club. And the small clubs are great too. Both of these have their strong points. There are things I love about festivals that I don't have in clubs, and vice versa as well. There are things in clubs you just can't get in a festival. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's like playing a club. I'm never too old, too successful, too big, too anything to play a club. That to me is the absolute spirit of rock and roll, the spirit of music. It's right there, looking at people, 2 feet away, sweating with them, having a great time, jumping up and down, and it's really a magical experience.
That kind of goes to the next thing I was going to ask you about, is as far as touring goes in this part of your life, in your career in music. How much do you participate in touring, and if so, what's the method of choice of touring that you do? Like, we talk about this all the time with other guests. The weekend warrior stuff, the fly-in stuff, the old traditional method. I guess as you are getting older, how do you approach touring, and how much do you do?
Yeah, I like doing it from home. I like doing it over Skype. I find that it's much more sort of less traveling. I can just sort of sit at home in sort of my front room and just do a concert from over a Skype connection. It's really cushy, But of course, I'm joking. But no, listen. I think that the weekend warrior thing that you've heard about, I think it's just a sign of the times. I don't think it's anything else. There was a time when we used to get onto a bus and disappear for X amount of months. This is before cell phones. It wasn't that long ago. It was cell phones just a little bit before MySpace, if you remember that. So it was before that. There was no cell phones, and so when you got on a bus, nobody could get hold of you. The only way they could get you was by looking at an itinerary and sending a message or leaving a message at a hotel. You were gone. That was it. Mm-hmm. You were gone. And there was something really cool about that too, because when you went on tour, that bus was your home. The people on the bus were your family. You weren't going to get away from them, and no one else could interfere. Nobody else could get into that. And it was just like how can I describe it? I mean, it was like a trip, literally a trip where you were taken away. You were in a completely different world, a different environment, and your whole head and headspace went into that. So that was kind of cool. I'm always trying to find the cool things in these things. Of course, it's much more convenient now, and we have communication. We're able to sort of be on the road and be in touch with our families and friends and everything else. However, just the nature of things and the way that people fly a lot now, I think it all made a lot more sense to start doing these fly dates. So people would say, well, we've got a show Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We'll fly out, and then we'll fly back again afterwards. equipment has gotten to the point now where lots and lots of venues have the standard equipment, and people might bring a particular item. I mean, obviously you bring your instruments and stuff, but maybe somebody will bring a head, or maybe somebody will bring their effects pedals or whatever it happens to be. But you'll show up, and a lot of the time they have all the equipment that you need, so you can do it that way. It's very convenient. And the only thing that sucks about it is it's really, flying has now become a very undignified form of transportation. At one time you would, dress up nicely to go and take a flight, wear your best clothes like a rock star, and now you look around and everybody's in sweats and they're lying on the floor and they're like, it really is kind of undignified. I think that's a good word for it. The people that kind of wanted to disrupt our system have done so to a very effective level, because it takes so long to get through an airport now, and you have to deal with so much aggravation, and I understand it, but that's become a bit of a problem. But other than that, we a lot of shows are done like that. I mean, the idea to take a bus, to get on a bus and then actually drive. I look forward to it. We'll do that sometimes if we'll go to Europe. So if we'll be in Europe and we'll be doing shows, we will have a bus to do that. But doing that stateside, it just doesn't it's not necessary. It doesn't make sense.
How much of it, too, I mean, outside of, the convenience, is that people aren't going to shows Monday through Wednesday or Sunday through Wednesday, whatever it is. I've noticed that at least we're in the middle of like nowhere, Illinois, Iowa, and we just have a hard time getting rock bands to come to our area. It's changed this year out of nowhere. We've got like Ghost and Godsmack and Slayer, and all these bands are coming. But in the past, we got like Heart and Hailstorm came on the same night, and then those are the only rock bands for like 3 years. It's usually country artists, or maybe Elton John and Alice Cooper will pop up. But how much is the audience not showing up during the week, or is that changing too?
I don't know. I mean, we actually we go out a lot to your part of the world. We'll go out to St. Charles quite a lot. We'll play there, and we also played in Iowa. When was it? Maybe was it the year before we played out there, and we then went straight to St. Charles.
Yeah, you might have.
Yeah, but no, I don't know. I haven't really found that, to be honest with you. I'm not just saying that. I mean, we play. If I look at my schedule, there's plenty of shows we play on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we don't seem to have too much problem with people coming at not coming out to the shows. So I'm not seeing that.
That's cool.
Maybe some places more than others. I don't know. If it's a place that's very industrial, maybe people want to get up early in the morning, and it's a weeknight.
Right.
But we don't see that too much, and we do our set. I mean, we do our full set, and it's not like our festival set. I mean, I have to jump off on a tangent here. Something I forgot to mention, but one of the things that was really, really cool about Donington for us, for Last in Line, is when we looked at that set, we only had a short amount of time, 35 minutes to play, and we looked at each other and said, "Well, what are we going to do?" Because we play a bit of a mixture of songs. I mean, we still play some of the songs that Vivian and Vinny wrote in Dio. Those songs belong to them. They wrote them with Ronnie and Jimmy, and so they're perfectly entitled to play them. But we're using them to bolster our new music, which we now have 2 albums of new material. And we thought we'd do something quite bold, which was basically to play an entire set of just Last in Line material for Donington. And I'm really glad we did that. And it was a special moment for us. It was really well received. And I think that was one of the highlights of us playing at that festival. But I just wanted to sort of mention that. I thought it was one of those things where you finally feel like, the band's finally being treated as correctly as its own original band, which goes back to something you said at the beginning of the show.
I was going to actually ask you about that later on. Is is it difficult, now that you are becoming your own band, and it's obviously you play those Dio classics, you're always going to get a crowd reaction. But now that it's very cool that that's the case. I'm glad you said that. Go ahead.
Well,
Eric.
that was kind of the next question. Well, not the last question, but the next question I was going to ask you is, we know the origins of Last in Line, but the band has now had its own identity now. With that being said, where do we see the future of Last in Line going as far as new material goes? 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what can we expect?
Well, it's funny. The four of us had a conference call this morning about the exact same thing, and we scheduled the start of writing sessions. So, come mid-August, we're going to start writing a third record. So we figured, why waste time? Let's get down to it. And we've had a great deal of success with the last album, with two. Even if it, even from a point of view of it being an album that we are very proud of and that came out better or as well as we could have ever hoped. The band has to evolve, and we use some of the Dio material because, to create a set around. And I think Vivian's the first person who I've heard him say it before, that when they started Dio, they were doing exactly the same thing, using some of Ronnie's Black Sabbath material and some Rainbow material to bolster the new material to their new albums, until they had sufficient material to be able to fill the entire set. And I think we're doing something similar. It's not a different reaction when we play those songs. I think people love hearing them. They love watching, Viv play guitar and to those songs, and they enjoy it tremendously. But at the same time, when we play our songs, it's not like they get up and go to the bathroom, They know the new material. They know the lyrics. They call out for the songs. We have a really cool thing when we do our meet and greets. We have a special thing where they can come and check out. They'll come in and check out the sound check, and then we'll throw it out there and we'll have them, yell out a song, and they can ask for anything that they want. Most of the time, we'll play it. And you'd think that they'd all come out there and ask for Dio songs. Most of the time, they'll ask us to play some of our material. They'll want to hear something that's obscure off one of our albums that we're not necessarily playing live all the time. And it's very, we're very fortunate that we're having that reaction. And believe me, it's not taken lightly. We're very appreciative of that. You have to be, because in this business, you can do everything right, and you can come up and write amazing material and record it very well and be very, very particular about it, and at the end of the day, it sometimes it just doesn't work. It just doesn't get the response. I don't know if it's that the planets don't align themselves exactly right, or that weird X factor, or whatever you want to call it. But like I said, it's one of the few industries where you can do everything right and the outcome doesn't work out, and then sometimes it happens, and when it happens, you have to be not take it for granted, and you have to be appreciative of it, because this is other people. This is other people liking what you're doing, and no matter how much you like what you're doing, this is an art form which relies on participation from everybody. The audience has to participate, and you have to participate in this whole thing. So for those reasons, this album came out really well. And we just are excited to go in and start writing new material. Where does it go? Well, if you look at the evolution between Heavy Crown and 2, that'll give you an idea of where it's going to go. Because I think 2 has some different influences. Of course, it's got my influences, which was one of the different factors involved in the new album. And I'm going to bring in my own influences as well. But you can see how the band evolved together, and this album was written in a very unique way. It was written collectively. We literally wrote it together, and that is very unusual for today. A lot of the time, we have this situation. I've got a tremendous studio in my home, and everybody does these days. Everyone's got one. They've got a coffee machine. They've got a studio. It's it's great. And so what happens is that bands tend to people come into a writing session with completed songs, almost with productions, and say, hey, here's a song I wrote. It's got productions. I played drums on it. I sang on it. I did this. I did that one. And everybody listens to the songs and they pick the favorite ones. And then they say, okay, we like these ones. We're going to work them up again. In this particular case, I immediately started preparing material, and Viv, I said to Vivian, I said, I got a bunch of stuff. I got some tapes. And he said, no, hold on. You don't bring anything in. I said, well, what do you mean don't bring anything? He goes, no. The way we did this with Dio, the way we did this on the first Last in Line album, the way we want to continue doing this is we literally come in with nothing, and we plug in, we look at each other, and we just start jamming and seeing what happens. And that's what we did. And before too long, Viv, the riff, or I would come up with a riff, or Vinny would come up with a drum pattern, and we'd start adding to it and then saying, well, let's go here, let's try this. That's how that whole record was written, and that is so unusual. It's so granular, and it's so refreshing to work like that. So when I try to explain where the new album is going to go, I can tell you that there are individual influences that go into this soup, for want of a better word. But it's all done collectively. I mean, Vinny has as much influence as Vinny, as Vivian, and as myself, and as Andrew. And Andrew's, just tremendous as well. He is just phenomenal. And I bring some bizarre influences, I suppose. And Andy brings his. I mean, Andy is like open to just about every style of music you could imagine. He doesn't necessarily like everything, but he's open to it. So he's everything from the old stuff to modern stuff to contemporary stuff to even different styles. Everything. He just takes influence from everything he hears that he likes, and that is evident in the way that he comes up with such unique parts. But even vocally, we work together. Andy and I work a lot on harmonies and ideas for vocal lines, and even lyrics and stuff like that. It's really a collaborative effort.
That's awesome.
It is.
That must be the longest sentence that anyone has ever said, I think.
No, last week he was longer.
Yeah, that was much longer.
He was a rambler.
Right. I don't mean to ramble. If I start rambling, just cut me off or something.
No, this has been very...
I won't be shocked. That's probably why it's called Nothing Shocking, right?
This is actually very interesting. My next question was going to be, how, you joined an established band, and you've done that several times throughout your career. How long does it take usually to feel like you're a member of the band? It seems like with Last in Line it was pretty quick, but over your career, has that been something that has been different in every situation, or do you ever even feel like you're part of the band?
No, I don't think you do feel like you're part of it. But many situations I haven't felt like I was part of a band. I realized, I'm not stupid. I know that, playing with certain people, playing with Ozzy was, there's been a whole, there's been a whole a crowd of people who've played with Ozzy. There's nobody who's ever going to go and play with Ozzy and they're going to be the person in Ozzy apart from Ozzy.
Right.
So I think you have to be aware of that stuff. And same with a lot of the people I've played with, be it Billy Idol or Vince Neil or John Waite or anybody. No disrespect to any of them, but the gig when you take the gig. This was a band which on first appearances looked like, oh great, I'm going to join this band, but that's not how it was represented to me at the time. After poor Jimmy passed away, they didn't even know if they were going to continue or what they were going to do. So they kind of took 10 and sat back and just thought about it for a while. They just finished an album. They hadn't even released it yet. It was just about to be released when Jimmy passed away. And so it came out, and they had some shows booked. And the question was, do we cancel the shows or do we do them? So when they approached me, that was a story I got. So I knew that the only plan at that moment in time was to go out and do those shows as a tribute to Jimmy. So I didn't really think I was joining anything. I just thought that I felt very honored that I'd been asked, to do this, because this was a way to do something not just Jimmy Bain of Dio, but for Jimmy Bain, who was my friend as well. And this was a way that I could do something for him, and I could kind of represent his music and take it to the people. He worked very hard on this album, and he had a lot invested into it. It was an important album for him, and it was sad that he was not able to take that music to the fans, and that was really all it was for me at the beginning. And it gradually evolved. All of a sudden, the band started gelling, and we looked at each other and said, "Well, this is a really good band," and we sort of like each other. We get on and stuff, and hard not to like these guys. They're, I've been friends with Vinny for 30 years. He's one of my best friends. So, and Vivian I've known for equally as long. And Andy, we've become friends 6 years. So it's hard not to be in a band with friends,
Absolutely. Kind of take this kind of a slightly different direction back to with Last in Line is, everybody's involved with other things besides Last in Line, and Vivian has Def Leppard, and Vinny's doing all kinds of different things, and yourself as well. With that being said, how do you, and the rest of the members of the band, how do you prioritize Last in Line amongst the other things that you're involved with? Where does Last in Line become the priority, and when does it not become the priority, and the other things kind of overtake that?
Well, I think the name says it all. Last in Line is really, it's the bottom priority of everybody, and it's the last thing anyone ever gets to. So, that's we worked that one out. No, I'm joking.
I was hoping so. I'm like, oh no, he's asking the wrong question.
No, these are jokes here. These are jokes. I'm just making comedy here. No, listen, Vivian in Def Leppard, of course, Leppard are a huge band, and this is a very, very important part of his career and part of his legacy. Now, he's been in that band for over a quarter of a century, and as far as I'm concerned, he's equally a member of the band, at least from my perspective. And I've known those guys since, I kind of grew up with those guys. So I've known them from back in England. We have to work around their schedule. We have to play peekaboo around the Def Leppard schedule, which we accept. We know that's what it is. And then what we try to do is we try to sort of fill in time to do other projects as well ourselves. I actually think that Last in Line is probably a priority for everybody, even including Vivian in a strange sort of way. Viv will tell you that playing in Def Leppard, Def Leppard is so finely choreographed musically that it's a performance. Every aspect of that is replicated exactly the same way and exactly perfectly every single time. The flip side of that is it doesn't really lend itself to much improvisation or stretching out or off the cuff stuff, which we do in Last in Line. And for that reason, I think he has something really interesting and something he enjoys tremendously about playing in the band. And for us as well. Andy will go out and do other shows, and he'll call me up and say, "Hey, it's not until I go out and do other shows that I realize what a great band Last in Line is, how much I enjoy playing in it." And I feel the same way as well. And I'm sure I'm speaking the same for Vinny as well, for all of us. So we would like to play much more. We're trying to organize shows, as we speak, future shows, and we can't seem to. We want to play more. Whatever we do, we want to play more shows. Viv's got an opportunity to take a couple of weeks off after. Towards the end of the year, and then he said to me, "Well, if we can get some meaningful Last in Line shows in, I'll go out and do them." So I don't think he's had a vacation now for a few years, so it is a priority, but it's difficult to sort of to schedule.
But we've talked to Mike Portnoy, who's under like 15 million bands, and whenever he kind of switches a band, it's like almost I don't want to call it a vacation, but it's like it's fresh and it's new, so he gets to start something over again. So it's not mundane, it's not repetitive. It's almost a new energy every time he does something. So he's never not doing anything. Is it kind of the same way? Do you kind of notice that same thing when you jump around? Does Vivian kind of I mean, what is your thought to that theory?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think there's a place in Burbank that clones Mike Portnoy, so you can get your own. Because I know you're right, he's all over the place, and he's a great guy, a great drummer, and everything else. But some people, I think, have that built into them, and I suppose I'm a little bit like that as well. I've always had a very strong work ethic. I don't feel good when I'm sitting around doing nothing. I just feel like, somebody said something to me years and years ago, and it just stuck with me. They said, "You got 30,000 days on this planet. What are you going to do today?" And all of a sudden, it was like, "Thanks a lot. Thanks for telling me something like that," because now it makes me feel guilty if I don't do anything monumental, But regardless, my dad was a really hard worker, and I've always been a hard worker. I've always been somebody who I never wanted to rely on anybody. I never wanted anything from anyone, and even when I was a young kid, I never took things from my parents or anything. We didn't have much growing up anyway, but I would go and get a job working in the newsagents, on Sunday morning when all my friends were sleeping, and I'd actually make money. And so I'd say, okay, well, great, I can pay my way at least. I've always been like that, and so, I don't really watch sports or anything. To me, it's like watching somebody else accomplish something. So I'm no disrespect to sports, but it just doesn't do anything for me. So I'll do stuff. I'll work in one band. I'll work on sessions. I'll mix music. I'll do stuff outside of music. I love restoring motorcycles. I love tinkering on bikes and stuff. I've had a restaurant. I enjoy the restaurant business tremendously. I do a lot of investing. I love the stock market. You name it. It's just something I love to do. And to me, a great day is when I get up and do a bunch of stuff, and a great night is when I've done a lot of stuff and sit down and have a great meal and go to bed feeling like I've done something. But there's a lot of musicians like me. I'm not the only one.
Yeah, we've noticed that. Yeah, that the career of a musician. We've noticed that more than not, you musicians are workaholics. That kind of goes into the next question. The way the rock and roll business is now, where you see very few mega bands like Def Leppard and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, just career bands for artists. That's their income. That is what they are. It's their company. It's their corporation. Whatever you want to call it. And we see now a lot of artists that are into, like Mike Portnoy does. He does 5 different bands or 6 different bands, and he just kind of keeps rotating them. Is that kind of like the way for like the artists now that are not involved in such the mega bands now to stay alive in this business, is be involved with as many things as you possibly can?
To a certain point, I don't think that being in lots and lots of different bands doesn't guarantee you get a great income from those different bands either. Sometimes you're doing those bands because it's an outlet for music, and it's an outlet if you're not working. Like if Def Leppard goes off for months, I want to do something. I'm going to work on a solo record. I just joined up with a couple of other friends of mine who have a band called The New Revenge, and we have some ideas that we're going to go out and do some shows. Lord knows when. But, all those guys are busy with other projects too. Kerry Kelly's busy with other things, as James Kotak is, as Ripper Owens is, and those are the other guys in the band. So it's just something else that I would do. So very often I think it's just great to be able to play. I also play in the Raiding the Rock Vault show in Las Vegas. Same thing. It just keeps me playing, and it keeps me getting better and better at my craft, and trying to remove the block between my heart and soul and my fingers, because that's really all being a musician is. It's getting over a handicap, and the handicap is the difference between what you hear and what you feel and what comes out of your fingers. Mm-hmm. So I always teach that to people. It's within us all. It just, you have to get over that. But there's also a psychological benefit to it as well. I mentioned earlier that in music you can do everything right, and the outcome is not guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So the nice thing about me working on a motorcycle is if I do everything right, it's going to work, and I know it's going to work. And so there's something very grounding about that, and I suppose cathartic would be a good word for that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain things where you can make up for the frustration that you get sometimes in music by, finding a different avenue for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that would kind of take me into the next question. We talk about like the psychology of things. You have worked with some of the biggest names in the rock and roll and heavy metal industry: Jimmy Page, Ozzy, Billy Idol, Vince Neil, Steve Lukather. Big musicians, big egos. I guess with that being said, has that formed you? Working with such big artists and big egos, has that formed your, or maybe blazed your path for you in a different way? Have you kind of morphed yourself into maybe a different style of musician if you had not worked with those type of individuals?
Well, I'm sure it has. I mean, I don't know that I, relate too much to the big egos thing. I think sometimes some of the biggest people I've played with have been the most humble, and in my experience, and the people who've had the biggest egos have been the people who haven't made it yet, who think they have, But I mean, working with the time I spent with Jimmy Page was just amazing, and he was very humble, and we stayed in touch for many years afterwards. And I have nothing but great things to say about Jimmy. I really like him. I mean, he's just a great guy to hang on one-on-one, and I don't think he wants anybody to know who he is. In some certain capacities, I would imagine he does, and I can't speak for him. But many times we would just go out and he would just be enjoying the anonymity, And so, we went out to a nightclub one time. We went out to a very, very exclusive nightclub called Tramps in London, which you can't seem to get into unless you're royalty, or you have to show up with a member. And we were supposed to be meeting a member there, and we get there and the member hasn't shown up, and we said, we're meeting this guy, and said, oh, that's fine, no problem, but can you please wait outside till he gets here? We said, that'd be fine, but this is Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. And she said, yes, if you could wait outside, that'd be great. Wow. And he thought that was the funniest thing. So sometimes that that anonymity is pretty cool.
Is that? I mean, there's something to you talk about that anonymity, and there was a mystery behind, when Led Zeppelin came out, and that all those bands from that era.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now that's gone, now everything is more accessible. The bands have to be on social media to and then it really helps them. And it's a good thing to have that accessibility. But as a fan, I don't know what I mean, I like both. I can't decide if I like that mystery behind bands like Zeppelin and the Beatles, or if I like the fact that I know what Lizzie Hale had for dinner last night. It's that kind of, what do I like better? I don't know. But I mean, as an artist, where you stand on that?
As an artist, I think from both angles, I think I prefer the anonymity, and I'll tell you why. I think it's a reflection on the way of the world that nobody explores anything vertically anymore. They want to just go flip from side to side. It's like looking at web pages. You open a web page, you don't want more than one click and you're bored. Next web page. Nobody really wants to find out about stuff. They don't want to delve in. And the more people delve in, the more people try to find out, the more time they put into it, the more they're going to get out of it, and the more personal connection they have to it. And so when you looked at Zeppelin, I mean, if you really want to know what they look like, apart from a black and white cover, photo on an album cover, you were hard pressed to go and find pictures and find research and find stories. And there was fan zines and stuff where fans would tell stories about their experiences about the band or their opinion about the band, and that was how you found out about this. And there was, when you did finally meet someone like that, it was like, oh my gosh, there's a god,
right?
This is someone who is. So what has happened now? I'll give you another little anecdote. When I heard that John Bonham had passed away, which was very sad to me because Led Zeppelin were one of my favorite bands. As a young kid, I wrote a letter to Jimmy Page. I looked on the back of an album cover, and there was an address, and 484 Kings Road, and that was Swan Song Records. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to write a letter and say, hey, I'm an up-and-coming bass player, blues rock bass player. If you're ever looking for a bass player, I'd love it if you threw my name into the hat, and I had an opportunity to come and audition, whatever. And sent it up. Did I expect to receive a response to that? And the answer is no, not really. Mm-hmm. Did I receive a response? No, I did not. And in fact, it wasn't until years and years later that I happened to, quite by a different stroke of luck, work with Jimmy or get to know Jimmy and start working with him. Now, if somebody writes me a note on Facebook or on social media and I don't respond, I'm a jerk.
Yeah.
You know, I really am. And sometimes I don't want to respond. Sometimes people try to drag me into like things that I don't want to get involved in, or things I don't feel like talking about, or things that just are not that important to me to talk about, or people's subjective viewpoints. Look, I don't give a rat's ass if you don't like the music I play. I don't for one moment think everybody in the world likes the kind of music that likes exactly the same music. There's lots of music I don't like either. But, you know, everybody's entitled to what they like and what they don't like. It's a free world, you know. Move on. So when people start getting in your face and trying to be insulting and stuff, I don't really have the time for it. But there's no real way to sort of just avoid it, you know. And I think that's just a sad state of affairs to me. It was just something that mystique was something that was very special to me.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's just me, but I don't know how you guys feel about that, you know.
Well, no, I love the idea of, it's at one point putting someone on a pedestal or making them a god is not always the most healthy thing in the world. But at the same time, you said Jimmy Page was super humble. And, you know, I've talked to several of my heroes, and they were just normal guys. And it was just kind of weird for me to be like, oh, you're just, Joe Perry is just a guy. You know, it's not a, so but it's very cool. And it just, I don't know. But I'm with you. I miss the mystery the most, I think.
And I'll interject on this one is that I feel kind of two-sided on it, because the first thing is that, you know, I was the kid that saved up his newspaper route money and would, you know, take it up that Tuesday with the new releases, and I would ride my bicycle up and I would, you know, buy the album or the cassette or the CD or whatever, and, you know, I'd take it home and look through the pages and
that was you. That was you, was it?
That was me. I was that kid, along with many others.
Hang on a second. We've got a new dog, and she is just like super excited about this bone. Hey, Lou, come here. Bring it over here. That's right. She's a good girl. It's just like beating a drum beat with one bone on the floor. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. And so then I guess on the flip side of that is that the nice part of technology and the accessibility is the ability of what we're doing right now is, you know, having a podcast interview with you. And I enjoy the accessibility that way, to where if you go through the right channels and if you're professional enough, you might get a reply from Phil, and just like we did, and, you know, a positive response. So I guess I'm kind of torn. I miss those days of riding my bicycle up to the record store to get the new release and to read all about it, and not read about it a year before on the internet or 6 months or whatever it is. So I guess, you know, that's my point of view. It doesn't.
But I think you've also come into a different line of work as well, which is the work that is involved in communicating between artists and between fans and music followers as well. So as such, I don't know that that's changed too much. I do know that Zeppelin had a very tight, or Peter Grant had a very tight hold on his bands doing too much press. But
right.
You know, I love the movie Almost Famous, because that really sort of showed, you know, the inaccessible musicians, the fans, and then the person who was really responsible for presenting the band to the world. I mean, that it was the press guy, you know, he was the guy who was the go-between. And that, I think, was really cool. And as is cool what you guys do, and, you know, whenever we do press. But the actual, you know, direct contact with fans sometimes, you know, loses a little bit of the magic, I think. And please don't get me wrong. I do love our fans. I love meeting our fans, and we have a blast with them. But I also remember from when I was a kid that there was something really like magical and mysterious about the bands I looked up to, the bands who I thought were my favorite bands. And I wonder if that exists for people anymore. So,
you know, it's kind of like we get kind of torn responses from that. There's still those hardcore rock and rollers that are still the big fans that still look forward to going to the record store and and shopping. But I guess I got one more question for you, and I know we've kind of taken a lot of your time this evening.
No, that's all good.
I wanted to touch upon Vibrate, your 2006 solo release.
Oh, wow.
And that was a really cool album. I've been listening to it. And I guess, you were always known as being a backup, or your backing vocals. This album, you went and became a lead singer. I guess how big of a challenge was it for you to take on such a task of this album? What was it like? I know it's been quite a while ago.
It was a while ago, and that album was really a culmination of a collection of songs that were written over a great period of time. So I don't know that is the most focused album. I like it for that actual reason. But when I was younger, I sang a lot in my bands. I always did, and to actually go and do this on a record, I sort of prepped up. I went and got some vocal coaching, and got just the same way that you would go into hire a trainer if you're going to run a marathon, and work out with them for a while. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. I remember spending a lot of time listening back and being super critical about vocals and thinking, how can I do this better? And the album I did afterwards, which was called No Protection, I think I was a lot more focused on it. And that album was written in one period, so there's a continuity that goes through the record. But I enjoy it. I mean, it's great fun to sing. I think it's different. It's a whole different matter to be a frontman for your whole life. I mean, being a frontman is also something you have to learn, and it's not something that you figure out instantly. So, someone like Andy, he is extremely comfortable with an audience. He knows how to turn it around, how to express himself, and how to draw them in. The shows I've done where I've sung, I've never had that kind of audience in front of me. But I think people, they do evolve into it. They do grow into it. My good friend Richie Cartson, needless to say, I mean, he's great at it, but he wasn't always a singer, and when he started singing, in fact, the band he has now, I put it together. Well, he put it together with me and the late great Pat Torpey, and we did three years of touring together. We did 3 tours, and during that time, Richie was becoming very, very comfortable as a singer, and at first he was just doing a great job of singing, and as I saw him get more comfortable with the audience and be able to kind of play with them and communicate with them on a better and better level, and he's phenomenal these days. So. I think you can learn it, but that's, it's nice to be able to do something like that. It's nice to sing and change it up a bit.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I just wanted to let you know, like, my introduction to Ozzy was Shot in the Dark, and I'm in love with The New Revenge. And I think Last in Lines, I mean, it's just, I don't know, I'm a big fan, so it's really an honor to have you on the show. So thank you so much for doing this with us. Yeah,
and so this is how it's going to work. We have some episodes that we have to release before yours, so we're about, Bob, are we 2 or 3 weeks behind schedule?
3, but unless you have something to promote, specifically, we can get it out early.
Right, so that's how it works. But before we let you go for the evening, is there anything else that you would like to plug or promote?
Well, only that we're going to be doing like I said, we're doing some shows stateside with opening for UFO coming up, and I think that's going to be their last tour, and we're really looking forward to that. That's going to be great. We're going to be doing some writing, as we said. We've got a show in August, I think, at the Golden Nugget in Vegas, and we played there just recently, and it was sold out, and it was so much fun. We had a great time, so we're going to do it again. And then later this year, I think I've been working on an autobiography, and hopefully I'll have that getting finished pretty soon. But that's a tough one. I mean, it's about 300 pages at the moment, and it's tough to write a book. You have to relive everything. It's very tricky. But that's it. Much of the same stuff. Just going out there and playing and kicking ass, as Americans say. Kicking ass. We say kicking ass. Well, we don't even say kicking ass. We say I don't know what we say. Just doing it. I don't know.
Well, we want to thank you so much, and we've enjoyed your company so much. And if you, first of all, if you would ever like to come back on, we'd love to have you. Just email me. And so when Bob has this all edited, I will send it to you or email it to you ASAP. And then we'll put it on our social media. And if you have some social media you could put it on, that'd be fantastic.
More than happy to do that.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. And like I said, if anything in the future comes up that you would like to come back on the podcast, please email me and we'll get you on as soon as we possibly can.
Absolutely. And you know what? If we're out in St. Charles or Iowa or something, let us know because, make sure that you guys can come down the show and we can say hi and stuff. So that would be great.
Fantastic. Well, Phil, thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric. And thanks, Bob.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The sky is choppy. No power in the verse can stop